wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and a week ago, I think both Michael Singh and I were on this very show saying that Lorenzo Insigne has probably played his final game for Toronto FC. Robin Fraser must have heard it and said, "Hold my beer, buddy," because Lorenzo is back. And it changed absolutely nothing. But we'll talk about it, obviously. And we'll also talk a little bit about sort of just the malaise of the start of the season. I think there's a lot of fans that are kind of in a rut to start this season. And we'll also talk a little bit about the team down the road, down the 401 from us, Montreal. They just fired their head coach, Laurent Courtois. And the question is, TFC, could they be close behind? Bringing in my co-host, as usual, Michael Singh. No Jeffrey P. Nesker this week. Mr. Singh, how you doing?
It was literally the very next day.
Literally.
Where we're on the show, and I think I even said, there's no chance Lorenzo Insigne plays for Toronto FC again. And then Neil Davidson drops a bomb with Keith Pelly. And I said, hey, yeah, if Robin Fraser thinks Lorenzo Insigne will give this team the best chance to win, he's free to integrate him. And lo and behold, Lorenzo Insigne makes another appearance for Toronto FC. And I think, Mike, we got to start there. That's got to be the place we get to.
Yeah.
So I'll throw it to you. I know you usually ask the questions, but I'll take your role for a second here.
All right.
Your impression just of the decision we'll get to his performance, but just the decision to include Lorenzo Insigne, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a little bit conflicted. In one hand, I get it. This is a team, goes into New Jersey. Traditionally, you don't play well there. Traditionally, you don't really get results there. And you're a team also down a couple of international players. You've got some injuries. And you think, hey, you know what? Like, we've got a DP player just sitting here. He's been training, every week. He's going to training. He's working hard from that perspective. And you say, hey, you throw him out there, you give him a shot. But I think my overriding feeling, and this is a little bit of just disappointment. I feel like the club, when you don't start him, when you don't even put him in the 18 for the first 4 matches of the season, that's a statement for a $15 million a year DP who at one point you had literally just basically called him the face of the franchise. To then sort of U-turn on that, and granted, like I said, just all the situations before, injuries, international call-ups, things like that, to then turn around and not just put him in the 18, but start him right away is a little disappointing. And look, Robin Fraser makes the call. You'll be hard pressed to tell me that at some point Jason Hernandez or Keith Pelly didn't come down and say like, "Hey, maybe it's time to put him in."
Can we talk about that for a sec? Actually,
yeah. I mean that part also gets me, and the other part of this is that how poorly has Theo Corbeanu started this season?
Yeah.
That they are literally like, we'll take this guy who has not even been in the 18 for the first 4 games of the season. We're going to start him over you. Eesh.
And he didn't even feature in the game. And
didn't even feature
for most of that game. No, but let's talk about, you touched on an important point there, which was that you believe at some point Keith Pelly / Jason Hernandez went down to Robin Fraser, gave him a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This whole situation to me seems so bizarre because the messaging from, management, and maybe this is something to do with compliance so that, MLSPA doesn't come knocking at their door. But the messaging has been, hey, Lorenzo Insigne is available for selection. This is all on Robin Fraser. This is the head coach's decision. That puts a lot of onus on Robin Fraser, and that I don't believe for a second that it is solely his decision whether or not to play Lorenzo Insigne from the jump.
Mm.
So, it puts him in a bit of an awkward spot. I mean, he was asked after the game why the decision to, include Lorenzo Insigne, and his response was straight up, "I think he gave us the best chance to win." Okay. Not really sure what changed and why, you know, all of a sudden you think playing Lorenzo Insigne 90 minutes out of the blue gives Toronto FC the best chance to win. Clearly, there's something more going on there. But it kind of has Robin Fraser taking another bullet for the team. Let's just call it that. Yeah, what do you make of that? Do you think he's getting thrown under the bus there a little bit, or is that just the byproduct of the unfortunate circumstances of where this situation currently is?
Yeah, Zhao kind of says it here. I'm not fully on the whole totally disgusted phase, but I kind of get where he's coming from here. Did they throw him under the bus? I don't know if they necessarily threw him under the bus, but I think what it ends up being is just, as Robin Fraser got parachuted into the situation, not as a situation he's kind of made, right? This is something that's been brewing for the last couple of seasons, and it's really coming to a head in 2025. And you kind of the thing that maybe not under the bus, but the thing you said at the beginning of the year, it's Robin's choice. He's got the reins of the team. He can put together whatever 11 he sees fit to try to get results. And for the first 4 games of the season, you go out and you make the conscious decision to not start him, not even put him in the 18, right? Like I said the other week, like if they were gonna do the U-turn you would have thought it happened at the home opener, right? Where there's that last little, okay, you didn't start him on the road, he's at home, maybe gets a home pop, whatever. He wouldn't have got a home pop, but now it kind of looks like you've come from the top and you've gone through all the options. You've tried to transfer him, it didn't work. You're trying to buy him out at a lower rate. That's not working because he's not taking anything less. Apparently, a report comes out midweek that they tried to trade him to an MLS team, and that deal fell through. And now it looks like you're just like, we can't sit on this salary anymore and kind of hold him out. We got to play him at some point. And a lot of ways, to a lot of people's point in here, it does look like TFC kind of capitulated here and kind of were like, hey, we gotta let go, as sort of as Brady mentions here, right? Like, and that's the thing that's sort of scary and disappointing. I don't know if this is necessarily on Robin, because how can you really put this on Robin? But it does show that the front office may not have as much control over this as they think they do, or at least that they are spouting to the public they do.
They folded,
yeah.
Right? They were strong-arming Lorenzo Insigne. They were trying to make his life maybe miserable is a bit of a stretch, but this is going to be the reality of his situation should he decide to stay in Toronto and maybe not accept a buyout or move elsewhere. And 5 games into the season, they decided they couldn't play that card anymore because of how results went. That's what the perspective is, at least on the outside. I think a lot of people see it that way. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what has changed. And I guess, we can talk again, but we'll talk about his performance within that 90 minutes in a second. But I want to jump ahead and just quickly ask you, is he back in the team full time now moving forward?
Yeah, like you can't just like bring him out of the box 1 week and say, okay, we're gonna put him back in. No, the box is open. He's back. Like, he's in the team now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you can't just say, oh well, we played him because we had injuries and international call-ups, and so we brought him back for 1 game. Like, that makes no sense. If that happens now you know how bad things are in the front office, right? Like, you can't. He's back. I don't know if he'll play every week, but he's back in the team now, essentially. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's in 18s going forward. And he makes a spot start here and there. Look, I mean, at this point, if you're going to play 2 up top, I mean, until Ola Brynhildson's back from injury, who else are you playing up there, right? You tried Theo, and so far, clearly you're not happy with that. You now tried Lorenzo for the first half of that game on Saturday. That was really not working. So what other choice do you kind of have? You've kind of now painted yourself in a corner where you kind of have to play him, because at least if you were sitting him, you could say like, well, we've decided to move on. We have gone in a different direction. No, we can't trade him or sell him or buy him out right now, but he's on the sideline and we're moving on. Now this doesn't look like a move on. This doesn't look like the rebuild. This looks like you trying to grasp something out of this situation. And I get it. Fans are frustrated. We haven't won a game yet. But I think, if anything, this decision will make fans even more frustrated than the losing. Because it's kind of, because it's just like, what are you telling us? What are you doing? Like, that's the feeling. Now I feel like I don't know what you're actually doing. And I'm not sure if you can really control this situation. And if you can't, what's going to happen when the next window opens and you promise there's going to be a midfielder, another striker, another defender coming in, and they're not coming in? Like, what does that look like? So I think that's where I'm at. And I think that's kind of where Lorenzo's at, where Lorenzo's like, listen, I'm winning regardless. I'm sitting, I'm getting paid, I'm training, I look fine, I play games. Okay. Like, there's no lose in his situation, really.
I don't think you can put the words winning and Lorenzo Insigne together right now.
Well, I mean, winning in the sense that he's getting paid. Now he wasn't playing before and it was just training, and now he's back in games. So from that perspective, he's winning.
He won this. He came.
Oh, he totally won this.
Everything that he's won. He's still in Toronto making a ton of money. Kind of everything seems to be under his terms now at this point. He still gets to express himself on the pitch in the way that only Lorenzo Insigne seems to express himself on the pitch, with a bunch of shoulder shrugs and arms throwing. And
great earring though in pregame.
Frustration.
In warm-ups, woof, what an earring.
But yeah, it's been interesting to see kind of where things go and where things progress from here. I mean, he played the full 90 minutes against the Red Bulls. Kind of surprised to see him, especially Lorenzo Insigne, knowing his history there, play full 90 minutes out of the jump. But okay. I guess let's talk about his performance in the game. In my opinion, obviously tempo was off, patterns were off, gave away the ball a lot cheaply, but still brings, more quality attacking wise than really anyone Toronto FC have at this point, maybe Bernadeschi aside. But even though he brought that, and there were moments, I guess, really didn't make a difference for Toronto FC. And I think you titled this episode appropriately. Insigne returns and TFC still lose. TFC is still the same. Didn't really make a difference. What'd you make of his performance over the 90 minutes?
Yeah, it was meh. It was like, okay, you're here, but really nothing changed. It was funny. The first couple of games throughout the season, okay, we've criticized the team on the show and sort of how they've played. But I've noticed that they have been much more aggressive high up the pitch in terms of trying to press, especially early on in games, where you're trying to get on that center back after that first pass from the goalkeeper, or if they make a certain move or make the first pass out from that center back, there's a lot of pressure coming. And when they do it and do it well, they win the ball in good spots and they can control a bit of possession. There was barely any of that on Saturday, right? Like Lorenzo Insigne was not going to press no matter what.
He makes press. He does this thing that drives me crazy.
Yes,
and I think a lot of Toronto FC players actually do this, where like you go and pretend to close someone down, but you're never sticking a foot in. You're going there to make it seem, or wait for your defender or whoever has the ball to make a move, and you just do a stroll by, right? You're never getting stuck in on a play like that. And Lorenzo Insigne does that all the time. There's a lot of people on Toronto, a lot of players on Toronto FC do that, and that drives me crazy.
Yeah, right. But I mean, where do you Where do you think that's okay? If your $15 million DP player is doing that, the rest of the guys are like, well, it must be okay. Like, he's just chilling, right? Like, he's just, like, okay, he gets a couple of sprint, like, 10-second sprint to try to close down a center back, but like it's a 10-second sprint to nowhere because he's never going to get there anyway, no matter how hard he sprints, right? Like, and it again, you saw moments where, and I get it, if you're playing as a forward, you don't necessarily have to be running as hard as you can every single play. That's not necessary. In fact, it's probably dumb if you do that. But there were just times where he'd give the ball away and he'd just stand there. And and he's looking at Marcus Zimmerman just like, okay, Marcus maybe stopped when he shouldn't have stopped or didn't come to the ball when he should have come, and there was maybe a turnover. But you just stand there and you stare at the kid. Like, how is that making Marcus Zimmerman just any better? Right? Like, if part of a DP's role and part of a senior player's role is to help younger players get better, he doesn't make them better. Like, like on the pitch, like there were, and look, okay, everybody's gonna say, well, he played that ball down to Derek Etienne Jr. for the goal. Okay, I'm not saying anybody's gonna make that pass all the time.
I am. I'm saying any attacking player in MLS
worth their salt can make that pass.
Obvious one too.
It's the most obvious ball to play.
Fine.
That's the positive thing. Again, you could say that's the positive, I guess. But like outside of that, again, that 90-minute display from Lorenzo Insigne sums up the majority of his time at this team and in MLS.
100%. That's well said.
A player that you can see has skill and just doesn't bring it.
The other thing too is I think he makes Bernardeschi worse.
Yes.
I think that when Insigne's on the pitch, they started off when they first got to Toronto a couple years back now. Jesus Christ, it's been 3 years.
I know.
They started off with a pretty spectacular connection, and it worked early on. But then it just became repetitive, and it became Insigne only looking for Bernardeschi and Bernardeschi only looking for Insigne. I thought we saw a lot of that from Bernardeschi on Saturday night, where, he was looking for late runs from Insigne in the box, or he was trying to force passes through to, Lorenzo. When Lorenzo's not on the pitch, you try and see Bernardeschi do something different, do something more. I mean, to be fair, none of it's really worked, whether he's looking for Insigne or whether he's trying to do something himself. But I did feel like having Insigne on the pitch put Bernardeschi in a little bit more of a box. And again, the results aren't there, so I don't really have any ground to stand on to say that TFC are better off without Lorenzo Insigne on the pitch there. But I did feel like it did impact Bernardeschi quite significantly. In this case, in a negative way, this particular 90 minutes. Now, in other instances, could it work? Absolutely. One of those balls gets slipped through, or the timing of the run works out, and TFC are in. And again, TFC don't get in quite often, but maybe one of those works. But I just felt like Bernardeschi, like I said, was just in a little bit of a box. Overall, 90 minutes. Like, if you were to isolate these 90 minutes, let's take the context of the rest of the season away. Okay performance. Like, they went to Red Bull Arena, a place historically they get destroyed.
It's Illustrated Arena now.
Yeah, sorry, Sports Illustrated Arena. The penalty that's given away is one of the worst calls I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, in no way, shape, or form is that ever a penalty. So they get a really bad break after an okay start to the game.
Which is worse because the referee on the field saw it and it wasn't a penalty. Like, he called out a penalty. It's VAR that called him back.
It was so bad. It was one of the most obvious dives I've ever seen. He took a full-on step afterwards and still went down. Still
drags his leg to make the contact, right? Like, he makes the contact with Wingo, not Wingo the other way around.
But he had his feet even after being clipped. Like, anyways, so bad break, but they they find a way out of nothing really to bounce back. Derek Etienne came on. He provided life, earned a lot of praise from Robin Fraser after the game. That's kind of where the bar is with attacking players, to be honest with you right now, is if you can come in and you can show some kind of promise, I guess is the right word, moving forward, you're going to be loved by this team, because this team is probably the worst attacking team in MLS right now and one of the worst defensive teams in MLS right now. So anyways, good goal. Great whip in cross from Derek Etienne Jr. Left foot to weak foot. DeAndre Kerr, once again, in the air, making money there. And then TFC breakdown again. And another unfortunate play. I think it was Kobe Franklin's man, Kosi Thompson, obviously keeping Emil Forsberg on side there, and Sean Johnson has no chance on that one. So
No.
It's
sorry, you know what the frustrating part about is I don't think Red Bull were that great on the night.
no.
Like, they get 2 goals. One is an unfortunate blown penalty call from VAR.
Mm-hmm.
The other, I won't call it a nice passage of play. It's a play where, like Kobe Franklin loses Emil Forsberg, and Kosi Thompson just doesn't react to stepping up, right? Like, the rest of the team step up, and he just is frozen. And that leads to the second goal. Outside of that, it wasn't like Red Bull were playing TFC off the park per se, and there were like tons and tons of chances, right? Yeah. I think what you end up having is one, a team that presses really well and presses well as a team, and TFC just, and this is not new over the last couple of years, do not handle teams that press them hard or even moderately well. They just don't, and they give the ball away cheaply. And that just leads to just losing possession in bad spots. Defenders are out of position, or they're not sure who they're marking because guys are all over the place because it's kind of a broken play, and you give up goals. And that's where you're kind of at right now. And as you said before, right? Like, anybody in the fan base is going to latch on to any player that is anywhere showing any kind of offensive prowess. And right now that's DeAndre Kerr. And to be honest, perfectly, DeAndre's kind of earned it right now. I don't know if that'll be the whole season or what that's going to look like, but he's kind of earned that opportunity. And the other thing that kind of concerns me from a tactical perspective from Robin Fraser is, like, he started off with Insigne Bernardeschi up top. Mm-hmm. And if that just wasn't working. And really, they got a little bit better when they make the tactical switch by bringing in Etienne Jr. and Kerr. Yeah. They, at least for, a small chunk, maybe about 10 minutes, maybe.
They were better, for sure.
Yeah, they were much better. They could control possession a little bit more. They just had a little bit more control in the game. You could put, Lorenzo in a more natural spot for him than up top, which kind of leads to the goal. So from that perspective, I think, if Robin Fraser can take that away and realize, like, maybe it's better to play with pace up top, to at least try to stretch defenders. Because right now, defenders do not respect Toronto FC, and they're not too concerned with pace over the top. But if you can keep a DeAndre Kerr in there, dare I say Derek Etienne Jr., I'm not sure he's going to start games, but at least it keeps some defenders honest.
Yeah, like, the question I always ask myself when, TFC score a goal, or any team really scores a goal, is that repeatable? Can you get more of that? Or was it, like, more so a moment of brilliance?
That's a repeatable moment. That has to be. That's kind of, I'm not saying it's you're going to do that every single week.
No,
but
yeah, I know.
You see that in MLS all the time.
Yes, it was an unbelievable cross by Derek Etienne Jr. Like I said, weak foot, catches the defense early. DeAndre Kerr, top of the box. That finish, like, don't take anything away from that finish. That finish was special. I mean, bar down from the top of the box, a header leading backwards. I mean, great pace on the ball to be able to execute that, but it was a really good goal and really well taken goal. And it, like I said, it came out of nothing. Like TFC were not they had no flow going offensively. They were not pressuring. It was really just a broken play that turned into a really well executed counterattack.
Yeah.
Could you do that more? Yes. Have we seen it enough to say, hey, this is repeatable? I don't know about that. I don't know if TFC have the quality, quite frankly, to be able to
Okay.
play goals like that.
On that, you might be fair, but to me, being able to get down the line and put in a great cross, but put in a cross from the left-handed flank into the box, that should be repeatable.
Terry Spicer does it a lot. Terry Spicer is excellent at that.
He actually did
He
it
actually
for.
could whip in a great ball. So
He did put in a great cutback ball this weekend. He put in a great cutback ball this weekend. Too bad it was for Trinidad and Tobago. But yeah, I mean, look, does TFC have the quality to pull that off right now? Probably tough to. I mean, look, right now it's one of those things where I think you just gotta let the hot hands cook. Don't worry about. Don't worry about who's going to play where, who's going to be profiled on the team, whatever. I think right now you just play the hot hands and you see what you get each week, because you mentioned it last week and a few people have mentioned it before. If you look at the next couple of games going into April, I mean, where are you finding these results? I don't know. I don't know where you find a result.
I mean, insane stat here from Trash Panda.
Yeah.
191 days since Toronto FC's last victory. September 14th, 2024. My math is correct. That's over half a year.
Yeah.
Since TFC's last win. And like you said, with schedule coming up, it's tough to envision they put an end to the drought. But it's miserable. It's really dang bad here. I mean, they're not a fun team to watch. They've got one of the most unlikable players in franchise history and club history, sporting the number 24 for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're brutal defensively.
And there's no, and you just don't see it getting any better.
And like you said, there's just nothing to look forward to, and nothing really optimistic. It's not like they have a ton of cap space that they can invest into this roster, and it's not like they have some sort of magical help on the way. I mean, here's the thing. There's only, I think, less than 5 players, maybe a little bit more now because of a signing or two, that have guaranteed contracts to start next season.
Yeah.
But we're in April. I don't really, or March. I don't even want to talk about next season quite yet, because we know kind of expectation was to at least make this team compete for a playoff spot. It's nowhere close to that. But the one thing about next season is that there is a lot of that blank slate coming up, and you could shed the majority of this roster, and there could be that turnover that fans were killing for this year come next year. But you're just wasting a whole season essentially, and that's kind of what this feels like right now.
100%. And just really quickly on that, I get that you're going to be able to turn over the roster, but is there enough trust in the front office to actually get it right? I know we talked early about some of the signings of Jason Hernandez and Sean Rubio, and that they were working out, and you got some okay players at bargain sort of basement prices, at least for MLS terms.
Yeah.
But you got to talk about Henry Wingo has not been great yet. He hasn't really been able to show what he can do. The jury's still out on Ola Brynhildsen, right? Cassius Mailula is playing really well for another team in Morocco right now, right? You're kind of looking at some of these signings, and you got Nixon Gomes that I think has, for the most part, been successful. You look at somebody. Yeah, I think he's been successful. I think you look at Zaymon Luis, didn't have a great night on Saturday, got pulled at halftime. I think that's going to be happening for a guy who's, again, literally in his, third senior professional game. but you're starting to look at some of these signings and be like, ugh, some of them are great, some of them are. So is this the front office that's going to be able to put together a roster that can once again be competitive in MLS? And I say that, and I ask you that because I think the general consensus about MLS is like, hey, it's MLS. You can be bad one season, and you can turn it around and be great the next season. Parity is everywhere, and it can happen. I'm finding in this league, parity is still there, but it's not at the same levels as it used to be. Now that you're almost expanding to 30 teams, you're starting to get a class of teams that are perennial contenders every year. Your LAFCs, your Seattles, your NYCFCs, your Red Bulls, right? Like they're not going to win it every year. They're not going to win MLS Cup every year, but they're going to be in that talking for a playoff spot. So that idea that you can just turn it around in one off season and everything is going to be fine is not exactly true anymore in MLS.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And TFC are clearly at the bottom of that that tier list right now, which is, I mean, you remember, everyone remembers where this club was. So to be seen as this, it's a tough reality. It really is a tough reality to really set that in. Now, like going back to your original question, do I believe that? Again, I'll repeat what I said last week. It's too early. It's too early to say. This team has had to, and when I say this team, I meant this current management staff has had to try to, rebuild on the fly, and they're taking a long-term approach. I mean, look at the signings. Majority of the signings Jason Hernandez made this year, if not every signing, is a loan with an option to buy.
Yeah.
Right. That screams to me they want flexibility moving forward. And that's because they know what's coming off the books in 2020 at the end of this season, 2026, for the 2026 season. They know Lorenzo Insigne has half a year left remaining for that season. Will they exercise the buyout in that off season? I think there is a long-term plan here, but short-term, it's not been good enough. It hasn't been good enough. I think you wanted to accomplish a bit of both. You wanted to be able to field a team that would be, competitive and start to win some of that belief back from the fan base, and you wanted to build for the future. And I think Jason Hernandez was trying to accomplish both in some of his signings. It hasn't worked so far. Some of it's been injuries. Some of it's been maybe a lack of turnover from the roster. Regardless of whatever that reason is, the product on the field right now, it's terrible. It's quite frankly brutal and tough to watch.
Yeah. Can I maybe address one question? Do you mind if I just address one thing from a comment? Somebody asked, and I want to try to address this. Matt asked, are we as bad as 2012 yet? And I think what they mean by 2012 is probably like 2013. And somebody said, okay, and I think Brady says, no, we didn't start 0-9. We're not starting 0-9. We're close. And then to Christian, look at the schedule, it doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any better. If you look at the schedule, you've got Vancouver next week. Granted, they just dropped their first result this past weekend. Then you have Inter Miami in Miami, or in Fort Lauderdale, I guess. Then you have a pretty good Minnesota team. And then you've got Real Salt Lake and New York City FC before we play CF Montreal in the Canadian Championship. So realistically, you may not be able to get 3 points maybe until RSL, but realistically, you probably not maybe even have a chance at 3 points until you play New England in early May. Right? And arguably New England is as bad as we are right now. Right? So that's a tough thing. And are we as bad as 2012? I think the context is different, obviously. Different league. TFC weren't quite, or they were spending, but they were just spending so badly that they were like one of the top spenders in the league, but just had a terrible roster anyway. And I think there are similarities. I don't think it's the same, but there's similarities in terms of is the front office, do people have trust in the front office? You've got a new coach coming in that's kind of transplanted into a toxic situation. You've got players that don't trust each other on the team, or players not necessarily giving their all on the team. And you got a fan base that's really frustrated, not just with results, but I think the nature and the path in which it got you to this point where you're like, this is completely avoidable. That's where I think I see more of the similarities to that time in TFC history than just straight up, hey, they're bad and we have a bad record. It's more the pathway to this place where we have made so many bad decisions that have laid the tracks to be where you are. And now you feel like you can't dig your way out of it, or it's going to take you eons to dig out of it. And look, it kind of did, right? It took them at least 2 to 3 years to dig themselves out of it. And really, you kind of get a bit of luck with Tim Leiweke showing up and giving TFC the priority. I don't know we're at the stage of that yet. I think we're closer to turning it around, funny enough, though we're kind of being negative right now, than that team was, or that era was. But I get it if you feel that way, because there are a lot of similarities to that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference was you got a taste of it. We got a taste of what success looks like. And
that's the hard part, yeah.
The recipe was there, and we weren't able to, Toronto FC was not able to sustain that success. And then when you come in as an expansion franchise, you don't really have the expectations that Toronto FC have had the last 5 years, right? And somehow, some way, year over year, this product has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And you hear the same kind of narratives being spun out from the front office, same kind of cliches being thrown out. They tried to go the one extra step and say full evaluation this year. Don't really know what they found, and don't really know what the
question. What does Marco Neppi do, or what did he do? Who knows if he's still around? I mean,
advised that they need a club identity, and you don't need a club identity. You need a your club identity has to be affiliated with the club as opposed to a manager, or as opposed to players. Which sure, I can get behind that messaging, but at the same time, can someone tell me through our first 5 games the identity? Can someone pick out the identity from Toronto FC? And I know it takes time to establish, but there's not even any remnants of an identity with this team right now. Even less so now that they've integrated Insigne back into the mix. But to answer your question, no, I can't really tell you much beyond that about what he does, and I'd be fascinated to learn more.
Did. We don't even know if he's still around or helping out or what the deal is. No clue. Okay, wanted to touch on this really quick. So down the road from us, down the 401 onto the 420 into downtown Montreal, the Club de Foot have fired their manager, Laurent Courtois, after a year and a month, essentially, as the manager. If we've started off bad, holy crap, have they started off really bad. They're on the same amount of points as we are. They haven't won a game either. They've somehow scored less goals than us. I think they've maybe conceded maybe 1 or 2 less than us. Or we might be close in terms of conceded. But I mean, the expectations on that team are different. They've gone completely young. But they're in a lot of trouble as well. But they have sacked Laurent Courtois, which surprised me a little bit, considering the route that they had chosen to go down, right? Like, this is a team that's clearly going to young players and trying to build that way. It raises the question that some people have asked here is, what are the odds that Robin Fraser survives the year, considering the start that TFC have had. And I just laid out their schedule until May. And where's the conceivable path to a win seems bleak. So I think it's early to make that call, and I think Toronto FC, for the most part, are going to probably give Robin Fraser this season, considering the mess he's inherited. But could you see a world where potentially, you get to May, this team hasn't won a game yet, and Robin Fraser's in trouble, like real trouble?
They can't. They can't. They've gone through too many coaches. They can't continue paying more coaches to leave. At a certain point, something's got to stick. And I think that Robin Fraser is a good enough coach in this league to at least be a respectable team. And at a certain point, it's got to go beyond the coach. The coach can't keep falling on the sword, right? There's been a lot of turnover at the club for a lot of different reasons. And one of the things you mentioned Leiweke coming in. What was funny about Leiweke coming in? I don't know if you recall, Leiweke cleared house at MLSC.
He did.
Like, he came in and he fired a ton of people, not just from the sporting side. So obviously not good for, the people that, unfortunately lost their jobs. But it did signify a bit more accountability throughout the organization. And the results, hey, they were there. TFC went on to win a championship. The Raptors obviously went on to win a championship. The Leafs are, still looking for playoff success, at least have made the playoffs for 10 straight seasons. I'm not calling for that at all, and would never call for that. Make you think, like, things there's a lot of people who are still at that club, but there's a lot of people that have been turnover. I don't know what that balance is and what that sweet spot is. But you gotta find a way to push forward and turn the page. And I know there's good people at that club. There's good people that are trying. There's gotta you gotta feel like something's gotta give. Something's gotta give in some way. I don't know. I don't have the solution. I don't have the answer. But when Leiweke came in, that big difference was it really felt like a fresh start. This doesn't feel like a fresh start.
No, it doesn't. And that said, I think it would be criminal if you fire Robin Fraser this season.
Mm-hmm.
I would, if they, the only way I really think you fire Robin Fraser is if it's clear to the front office that somehow he loses the dressing room, that the players are just not buying into what he's trying to do, and this is clearly not going to go anywhere. I think that would be insane. But again, we're two people who thought Lorenzo Insigne had played his final game for TFC. This is probably now a death kiss to Robin Fraser as Toronto FC manager. But I think if you fire Robin Fraser this season, given the situation that you have brought him into, again, a situation not of his making,
well,
right?
You're living under a rock if that's the case.
Yeah, you are. Then Matt's question is this 2012, 2013 TFC is 100% accurate, because that's what that TFC would have done, right? That TFC would have brought a guy in, think you change everything in like 3 months. You didn't change things in 3 to 6 months. You're out of here, right? No thought of context, no thought of, maybe you as the front office may have put the pieces in place for his failure, right? And that's what that TFC would have done. I don't feel that's where this front office is. I just don't think so. And I think you're right in the sense that they are kind of biding the time and just waiting for this clock to run out in this 2025 season to really try to start cooking in 26. But again, what happens if we're saying this as people who have followed this club for a long time and think it would be insane to fire another manager and have to do this again. We're laughing at Montreal for firing another manager. We're on the same track record as they are in terms of the amount of managers in the last 5 years. So, I mean, if the pressure becomes enough, if the fans are like, there are fans right now in this comment saying like, look, if he doesn't beat Montreal in the cup in a couple of weeks, he's sacked, right? Like, what happens if the pressure turns up from the fan base? Do you plug your ears and say, forget it, we're not going to listen?
I mean, they did that with Lorenzo Insigne, bringing him back.
Difference between $15 million you got to pay. You're not paying Robin Fraser that much money.
You're not, but you're still paying something for nothing, right?
Yeah.
And what's the point, right? Are you going to salvage this season? And I said this when Robin Fraser was appointed, right? He's going to come in at a fairly decent cost. He's going to, in a lot of ways, he could be that holdover coach where you're going through a transition. You have young players coming through now more so than ever, it seems like, where TFC are investing in, young players. It's quite possible that he's the guy that goes through this rough transition, and when TFC are ready to turn on the burners a little bit more, they go out and get a coach who they think can help them take that step. If it's not Robin Fraser, maybe it ends up being Robin Fraser, and I hope it does, but that is definitely a possibility. So I don't think there's any chance they fire Robin Fraser this year, because it is ultimately a transition year, and that includes maybe even one for the coaching staff. By the way, just a note, TFC2 today signing 15-year-old Jamari Nelson, Jamaican Youth International, and Neil Davidson with another piece with Sean Rubio, technical director for TFC, and Sean Rubio saying that, sorry, it was Jamari Nolan, sorry, not Nelson. I have Jaden Nelson stuck in my mind because he's coming down the wing on Saturday. Sorry, Jamari Nolan, 15-year-old Jamaican Youth International. Sean Rubio saying that he would slot him among TFC's top prospects. So he's a number 9. That's exciting as well. Also, Tom Bogert reporting earlier this week that Richard Chukwu is training with Austrian Bundesliga champs Sturm Graz.
Aaron Ginsberg ahead of you on that one.
Yeah, there you go. We've talked about Richard Chukwu on the show. Exciting young prospect. Would be a loss for Toronto FC for sure. But TFC do have some more prospects coming through the academy in that position. They're quite deep in that position. We'll see what happens and how that plays out there. But TFC continuing their youth movement, which is promising to see because we know, it hasn't been paid attention to enough. So
no, God no. And I mean, I think friend of the show Matt Doyle had written after the home opener loss about how TFC have criminally underutilized the region in terms of talent. And I think in the end of the day, you are seeing younger players get into the first team now. The question is, are they going to make impact? And that's the thing, right? We have, in my opinion, we have yet to see a academy player come up, and I don't think Jonathan Sawyer does not count. Make a real impact on the team, like have moments here and there for sure, but not really make a massive impact on the first team yet. And to me, that should be concerning in terms of your academy setup, that you haven't been able to find, players that come out of the academy and really make some kind of impact on the first team. And I know, okay, so like Aaron's coming and saying Ashton Morgan slander. Yes, Ashton. I know Ashton. I love Ashton. That's my guy. When I'm talking about like be a guy that comes out of the academy and really, really takes his team to another level. We have not found that player yet, and that's all due respect to Ashton, right? Because he had a long career, a great career as a footballer, but we keep getting little hints at, this player's going to be the next one. It was Jaden Nelson first, and it was Jaquil then, right? We're starting to hear things about Chukwu. I don't know if he'll make the first team, if they'll sign him or if they'll sell him or let him go. But we haven't really gotten to that point yet. And I just wonder, with more CPL clubs coming, with them focusing on youth a lot more, like York United now has their academy set up going and running. You can say what you want about Forge, whether they use Sigma as their academy essentially. There are a lot of different options now for players. They don't just have to go to the TFC academy anymore, right? They can go elsewhere and probably be more likely to get senior minutes and maybe get their move that way. And I just think right now, if the idea is that this club is going to go down the youth path and bring more players from the academy to TFC2 and then into the first team, you got to start seeing some results in terms of some of these players just being able to really impact the first team, because it seems like they get to a certain point and then it doesn't quite materialize, and then you end up in situations where they play a little bit, they don't play, then you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, what do we do with them now? You don't have any value to sell them on. You try to get some moves with an MLS, they don't have a lot of value there, so you just end up letting an asset go for nothing, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jaden Nelson, I mean, look, they got a transfer fee for Jaden Nelson, but he's come back and he's had quite the start to the season for the Vancouver Whitecaps, which,
yes,
I gotta imagine that it hurts CFC inside. But I've spoken to a couple of agents even about this, and because of what you're saying, there's a lot of agents out there that don't want their young kids playing for Toronto FC. I think that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's a narrative that the team is trying to change, and I think them going in this direction is still the right move, to go younger and to try to integrate more young kids through the academy and through to the first team and kind of build that pathway, because you got to start somewhere. There's just way too much talent here. However, that is something that they're going to have to, it's a challenge that they're going to have to overcome, and kind of like the same way they got to win fan bases back, maybe there's some truth there that they also have to win some agencies back, which does play a role here, is important, and is something to really, really consider as they kind of build out this blueprint moving forward. Okay, Mike, looking ahead, Vancouver coming in, we talked about Jaden Nelson, Ralph Priso actually both starting for Vancouver over the weekend, a 3-1 loss to Chicago Fire. They were missing a couple of players. That's their first loss of the season. Vancouver started off as really the hottest team in Major League Soccer. More than likely, they'll get those players back. Obviously, get the Canadian internationals back, which, by the way, shout out Canada for a big victory over the United States.
Let's go.
Before I get to your prediction on the game and how we think it'll go, let's just say hypothetically Lorenzo Insigne gets the start. What's the reception going to be like?
Considering at the home opener, there were supporter groups chanting F Insigne, F Lorenzo. I don't think it will be great. Well, I think it won't be great from a certain pocket of the hardcore TFC sickos. I think generally from the general public who don't follow this every day, they'll clap.
I don't know. I
Loud,
disagree.
but
I think this story has gotten bigger than that. I think everybody, not everybody, but most people have now understood that Lorenzo Insigne is who he is, and I think he'll get booed, and I think it'll come through quite clearly.
I think he'll get booed. I do think he'll get booed. I just think that there's going to be a section of people. There are such a section of people when we post stuff about Lorenzo Insigne on.
Sure.
I heard just like Insigne for life, fanboy for life. And I think there's also just a section of the TFC dumb that don't necessarily care and are like, I just want to see the star player do their thing because this is what I think my money is entitled me to. But I think he'll get booed I think the South End will boo him quite loudly. And I think there's a decent amount of people who will boo him, but I also think there will be a number of people that will try to support him, and that's what they believe that they should do, right?
Yeah, that is what it is. All right. How optimistic are you that they can pull off a result at home?
That TFC can pull off a result at home, not very optimistic. I think this Whitecap team is quite good. Yes, they were missing Brian White. I think they were missing Ryan Gold as well. Yeah. Also because I think he's hurt. He's injured. So I don't know if he'll be back on Saturday, but they'll have Ryan White for sure. Look, I think this team, I think a lot of people look at this Vancouver team and they say it's two guys. It's two guys making stuff happen. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think this is a well-rounded team. Jade Nelson will be back at BMO with something to prove, I think, as well. And you've got a team that's pretty good defensively, right? So I will be interested to see how that plays out. Can TFC get a result? I mean, possibly. But there's nothing that TFC has shown me this season that indicates that they will. Right? They don't play consistent.
30 minutes at home.
Yeah. They got 30. At best, they've shown us that they got 30 minutes at best of good football. Could that be enough to win a game? It could be, right? Like you could score a goal, maybe even two at home, and you're able to sit back and be able to withstand a lot of pressure from Vancouver. It's possible. I mean, you know who I feel bad for? Jonathan Osorio. You're coming back for that Canada camp. The vibes are great. You know, everybody's playing at such a great level. You know, you've got a manager you believe in, and you got to come back to this. Mm-hmm. But could it happen? Yeah. Does it happen? I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah. I mean, look, Ali Ahmad coming back too for Vancouver after a terrific Canada camp. It's tough. I mean, Vancouver's a real team. They're good. They're a good team. They've, you know, it's funny when, you know, you think back to that 5-year plan that Bill Manning set out and all around the World Cup of having, you know, a group of Canadian internationals representing Toronto FC and having a good quality team also built around them. That's kind of what the Vancouver Whitecaps are right now, heading into 2026. And the funny part is Vancouver Whitecaps are also for sale. So I don't really know what to make of it. I don't know what's going on in Vancouver. What I do know is that they look like they are a legit team, and TFC are going to be up for a real test. And they traditionally don't play well against Vancouver, at least lately, since really the post-Vanny era. So good luck. Good luck.
I mean, yeah, again, just to reiterate that schedule, basically, you know, between Saturday against Vancouver, you're looking at every team they're up against until they get to Montreal. And you don't even, let's not even count the game champions. Let's just look at MLS, period. They don't play a non-playoff team from last year until May 3rd when they play New England. Every other team has been a playoff team. So, and I think are currently, maybe other than RSL, because I think they've had a struggle to start, a little bit of a struggle to start the season. We lost Mike. But just to recap, you know, TFC conceivably in the league, you know, could be on 1 point until the beginning of May. It's not inconceivable. You know, you hope that they can find a result in here somewhere. I think maybe there's an opportunity against Real Salt Lake. We'll see about Saturday against Vancouver. But really, at the end of the day, you don't really get a break in the schedule until the beginning of May, where you get New England and DC back to back. And then after that, it's another gauntlet again, really. So buckle in. TFC fans, buckle in. This could get a whole lot worse.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
It is so bad.
It's tough to see how it can get worse, but it probably will.
Yeah, it will. And Chris, answer your question. Yes, that game is away in Sandy, Utah. So again, TFC have traditionally not done well in Sandy, Utah. Okay, let's wrap it up. Thank you everybody for listening to another Toronto Till I Die. We really appreciate it. Every week, it feels like I keep saying we're try to find the light somewhere. I know it's not easy. Laugh through the tears. That's really all I got for you right now. But we will be back next week, hopefully to talk about a potentially positive result. I mean,
give me a surprise, man. Give me a surprise.
We could be surprised. It's football, man. It's a funny old game. It could turn out differently, but I don't think the two of us. I don't think we're holding out much hope. Find us wherever you get the show. Google us. We're on YouTube. Thank you, by the way, to all the listeners. You got us to 500 subscriptions on YouTube. So we really appreciate that. Jeff is over the frickin' moon about this. So we really appreciate it. All of you sickos that listen in every week. Tell your friends. We're here to try to lighten the mood during the week, at least. And also, if you're listening on podcast the next day, 5-star reviews wherever you can review us. Find us wherever you get your favorite pods. Again, every listen, every download is greatly appreciated. For Michael Singh, I'm Mike Newell. We'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Peace.
And wait, and baby, I'm TFC till I die.